You are listening to Duty, a retelling of Waterloo, written and read by Michael Seeley. Book 1, A French Peace. Chapter 1. Damn him to hell! Cancel that order and turn him around, or we'll be speaking English before the week's out. The Emperor spit the words in my face, his eyes piercing me to the core. I saluted and wheeled my mare around. The sweat poured down her back, and Violet's sad mouth flecked a horrible coverlet of foam over her lips in the breeze of a June evening. There was nothing to be done. A messenger worries little for his own rest, and his animal, although pitied, can't be coddled when empires are at stake. She clattered back up the road. Like our first journey, the clogged and rutted path didn't aid the return trek. Men cluttered the road like vagrant animals, all waiting for some succour. Some cried out, already wounded from the battle. Others heaved the caissons forward when the oxen couldn't move fast enough to please their officers. A battle was a terrible thing. But 2 battles to organize, prepare for, fight in, and die by were almost too much to bear. Our army was harried, and we and the Emperor's staff were no exception. "Move!" I cried. "Make way for the Emperor's messenger!" Perhaps they were lazy, but the cries elicited little movement or leeway from the massed stragglers on the road. Finally, with the help of a nearby colonel and the emotion of my voice, the sea parted. I swam through, fighting that current of time. I gave Violet her freedom. Despite her tiredness, the animal had always guessed the necessity for speed, and once the road cleared in front of her, she needed no extra prodding. We were racing across the fields again. Although Belgium was pretty, beautiful even, I had had little time to look at her in the days past. The war drums were beating again. Our losses at Leipzig, the Berezina, and the fall of Paris, Moscow, they all cried out for vengeance. And with luck, we would have it. France had wanted peace. She had called for it. She had begged for it. She had received none of it. If the bonny English and the mustachioed Prussians wanted a war, my emperor would give it to them. We'd been standing together when the news first broke. The Prussians, under that aged fox Blücher, were marching to meet with Wellington. His hands pressed firmly on the table, the emperor had closed his eyes and did not seem to breathe for many moments. At last he raised those hands and flung them back, past his sides, cupping them in the small of his back. His frame froze for long, wordless minutes. We glanced about us. Eye contact is the guiltiest of silences. None of us knew his thoughts. The only one who had been able to discern those, the Emperor's longtime chief of staff, Berthier, had been murdered months ago. Someone pushed him from a window. With his neck snapped, we'd be missing his advice. "We'll need some more troops," was all he said at last. In the fading candlelight I caught a glimmer in those eyes. It was the same glint that had woken me on a snowy field in Russia years past. It was that same twinkle that had conquered the pride of the old order. It was for that shine that I'd trust Napoleon with everything. We had marched. A gaggle of wagons blocking the path ended my reverie. Their wheels sank down into the earth, loaded with extra muskets and powder kegs. Ignoring their drivers' shouted curses, I threaded through the patchwork of carts and even leapt into the ditch for a time, Violet bouncing beneath me. Regaining the path, I spurred her onwards. If the blasted general had followed the Emperor's orders, things would be different. Even now the commander was ruining both of the battles. He was needed at one or the other, but de Erlon had spent the day wandering between the two. Fields and trees flashed behind us as we ran. Our bodies breathed together, and as I glided up and down with each of the little mare's strides, I could see her moving, her body, her pulsing sides moving. Her flanks heaved in and out like a great bellows, gulping the necessary air as she blew us forwards. Around us, the sounds of the battle mixed indistinguishably. Somewhere ahead, Ney was dueling Wellington, and just behind, my emperor was coming to grips at Ligny. I sighed, and here I was, racing in the haggard byways between each engagement, seeking some fool who couldn't follow the chain of command. If General de Erlon didn't arrive at Ligny in time, there was still a chance that Blücher could escape unmolested. The consequences of that could be dire, giving Wellington strength. Looking down the path, I sighed. The refuse of battle was beginning. In the place of carts, broken men shuffled along. Limbs were missing. The remaining bloody stumps a sad testament. Others wandered to and fro, their sightless eyes covered with reddened cloth, their hands grasping the sleeve of a comrade. Still others clutched their sides, hoping to keep their entrails from spilling onto the dusted road. Poor wretches. My heart was with them, but my message was with me. I leaned down in the saddle towards a red-haired lad, no more than 18. Perhaps he was Irish, too. Tough luck, I spoke his way of apology for his wounds. What unit, friend? He glanced upwards, grimaces flashing through his flushed cheeks in waves, his hair matted with sweat. Kellerman's cavalry. I was, anyway. He motioned downwards at the shattered leg and the crutch which held him upright. From what I could tell, a musket ball had sheared through his leg. You were at Courtebras? Yeah. Tough fighting. He turned and pointed. Just up the road. I checked the sun for time and direction. If Ney was ahead to the north, then de Erlon would be east. I leaned further down and clasped the lad on the shoulder. My thanks, friend. God help you. He mumbled something incoherent, but I didn't have time to rehear his sentiments. I dashed onwards, Violet clipping her hooves along the walking wounded. Despite their grotesqueness, it was a good sign. If the battle was close enough for these men to wander back to some field hospital, de Erlon's corps would be close. I took the nearest side road I came to, the fading sun along my back. The errant commander could be reached, and the battles were not yet done. Napoleon's victory was almost complete, and if de Erlon's arrival on the field would be enough to crush Blücher, he would be out of the campaign, leaving the Emperor free to overpower Wellington. A small smile crept across my face. That smile became an outright laugh when the rolling carts again appeared ahead. Before I had cursed their blockage. Now these new vehicles were the telltale sign of my goal. The First Corps was directly ahead. I spurred Violet onwards, my heels digging into her already tired flanks. The little mare put on speed, winning my love for the countless time. I raced past the carts and the cannons that followed, waving a greeting to the men who shouted at me, many commenting on my hair. If I wrote down all the jibes I'd gotten from my auburn locks, I'd have a tome with ease. Soon I was in among the infantry and shouted my orders towards challenging officers. No one stops an aide to the Emperor for long, so I was able to bustle through the throng, eventually coming to the head of the column. In the sky, the sun and France's fate sank lower towards the horizon. But there he was, riding along like some blissful imbecile. The man's balding head and thick-set jowls did not endear him to me, and I was already angered by his impotence. The Emperor had given him an order, and he'd ignored it to follow Ney's wishes. The dust flew from Violet's hooves. I yanked the reins hard, catching her, halting her. Just ahead, de Erlon glanced over at the disturbance. "You again?" he barked. I set my teeth. "Captain Aidan Rowe reporting, sir, with the Emperor's compliments." "Yes, that was the case 3 hours ago when I sent you back to him." "Yes, sir, but he sent me back post-haste. You've been reordered. The Emperor countermands Marshal Ney. You're needed at Ligny, sir, now." I handed over Napoleon's scrawled message. De Erlon flipped it open, sighing. He muttered something about incompetence under his breath, but his eyes widened as he read. I could even make out his muttered words. "Count de Erlon, you will save France and will cover yourself with glory." The man snapped the paper into his fist. "Very well," he huffed. "Tell His Majesty that I'll be there." "With all due respect, sir, please hurry. Blücher is more than taxed. If you arrive on the enemy right flank, we have every hope of capturing and routing their entire army." I laid out to him the particular points I'd glimpsed. For a moment the other's face held its rigor. Then slowly, his brow raised, a grin forming on his face, and he sat straighter in the saddle. If given the chance to save a battle by my actions alone, I'd sit a little higher as well. "Please, sir, all possible speed." Yes. Now report back to His Majesty. I won't be rushing along if I'm chatting with you." Without another word, the man spun in his saddle and began bellowing at his aides. The column began slowly reversing. As I trotted back to my commander, the wagons and trailing cannon were angled to the sides of the road to allow the body of troops to pass. Riders were dashing to and fro, offering advice and orders. More than one bewildered officer swore at the new commands before he screamed at his men to reverse and quick march back towards the battle at Lingy. I wandered through this maelstrom of activity. I delivered my message, and Violet was too far spent for another dash back to headquarters. I'd give her her heed soon enough, but the horse's heaving sides and flared nostrils were telltales enough. We wound through the body of marchers, and we'd return to the Emperor soon enough. General de Erlon was returning, and Blucher might not slip through the noose yet. As Violet traipsed through the paths, I found myself slipping into memory again. Years and countless leagues distant, I was fighting a tyrannical English king. The revolution came to stop the excesses of the nobility. Napoleon came to end the excesses of the Republic. And I came to avenge myself and Ireland. But I was not alone. Somewhere ahead, Killian O'Meara, my brother in bond, if not in blood, marched in the young guard. We'd enlisted together, but our paths had sent us along different journeys. Saving a monarch's life would launch any career, but I had always had a small smile to think of how life had progressed, how one action had thrown me into the friendship with Europe's most powerful man. My successes always made me pause. "Move along!" The shout ripped through my reverie, and I jerked up and around at the voice. A colonel, his mustache flicking as he moved his lips, was staring at me. His hawk nose loomed overhead as he motioned me to clear the way for his regiment. I saluted and kicked Violet into a fast lope, moving closer and closer towards the battle and my emperor. Thank you for listening to Duty, a retelling of Waterloo. The music is from Movement 4 of Dvorak's New World Symphony, recorded by the Columbia University Orchestra, and available at the Internet Archive at www.archive.org. For website and more information on Michael's work, please visit www.michaelseeley.blogspot.com.